my setup for my tomato puree machine is all done. I have cleared the decks, and I have pulled out my food grade buckets, and I basically just used them for this process. I've got two of them, one that will hold the drained tomatoes and one that will hold the tomato puree after it's gone through the machine and removed the seeds and the peel. And I have the it's a little bit different setup than I usually have, but I think this one's going to work better. I have it on an angle, and I have a pot to catch all the seeds and the peel, and as I said, a bucket to catch the puree. I'm doing 50 pounds of tomatoes today, and that is a small quantity for me, but I've checked my stock, and last year I went crazy. I probably did close to 200 pounds last year, and therefore I actually have enough for this year, but this lot is security. Make sure that I don't run out, just in case. Whatever, if I use it a lot, sometimes we use it a lot, sometimes we don't. So anyway, I'm all set up. I will be going out to the garden now and picking some beans because I haven't been there for 2 days. So I'm reluctant to leave the beans to get tough and hard. So I'll be doing that as well. I'll be just doing a quick visit there, then I'll be coming back and spending the day jarring up, canning and jarring up tomato puree. Well, it looks like I'm going to have to put the tomatoes aside just for a little while. Actually, I won't really be putting them aside. I'll just be doing double duty because I did go to the garden to get some beans. Should have done it yesterday. Pumpkin gifted to me by one of the other gardeners. And of course I gave her some beans, and as I said, I should have gone yesterday. Got my work cut out for me to get these blanched and frozen as well. So, okay, step one with the tomatoes pretty much completed. I've got most of them washed. That would be this pile here, and when that dissipates a little bit, I'll wash the balance of it. Now I have both pots of water on the stove, and I believe that they are both boiling. I was going to use one of them for beans. No, this one's not quite ready. That one is. I was going to use them both for beans, but I figure since I've got my tomatoes ready, let's get them processed as quickly as we can. So once they are blanched and come out of the water, the waiting time will be more in waiting for the excess water to drain out of them. So how long do I blanch these? Well, until the first skin starts to split. It could take a few minutes. So I just periodically check them, and when I see that the skin has split, then they start to come out. That means that they're hot enough. Now, if you don't have if you don't have the tool that I have to turn this into a puree, you could also take this step, then put it in cold water and just peel the skin off and put it in jars. And perhaps I will do that with a few of them just to show you how the process goes. Okay, my first lot has come out of the canner. These the skins have begun to split, and I'm going to just plunge them into cold water, only because I plan to hand peel these and put them in jars whole. This is for the benefit of those who do not have a machine like I have. Now, when the second batch comes out, it will not go into cold water. Okay, so process. Skin will just fall off. And it's still hot. And just put them whole in a jar. And actually you can cut the little end off. So just cut the end off and put them whole into jars. Cut the end off and put them whole into jars. It's a fairly quick and simple process, actually. So that's how you would very quickly make peeled plum tomatoes whole for yourself. And I'm going to make a few jars of these and then just can them up with the rest of mine. Now, you see, you don't even need any liquid in this. Let me see if okay. Let's continue along here. So, peel, trim the end off, and just fill your jar up. And I'd say that that jar is pretty much full. Go on to the next one. And actually, this is probably what the process that I'll use for any tomatoes that come out of my garden. So, quick and easy. No real hassle at all to do these. Now, if you don't get quite up to ½ inch, you can add some boiling water to this. I'm going to try not to add anything but its own juices. There, you see? Pretty much didn't cut enough of that tip off. Okay. There we go. So you don't need any fancy equipment. I've been blessed by my mother, who bought me the unit that I have. I probably never would have been able to afford it myself when she bought it for me. I believe I had one of those really old hand crank ones, and she probably felt sorry for me and bought me this lovely electric one that I've used year in, year out ever since. So definitely a whole lot easier not to have to hand crank. And yeah, this can be a little bit more wasteful than using my machine because it does clean off all the peel much cleaner than I'm doing here, but once again, you live with what you have to work with. And it's better to be able to put up some food than not at all, especially this day and age. You never know what's going on anymore. Okay, and same process as always. We take our vinegar and clean the edges, and I did muck these up a fair bit, so got a lot of cleaning to do here. So, yep. Now, these whole tomatoes, you could use them the same way that I use my puree. You cook them and cook them down and make whatever you like. Okay. Could be used for pizza toppings, could be used for chili, can be used for pasta sauce, anything you want. It's, once again, if you don't have the equipment, either hand crank or electric, this works. Now, the one thing I did forget was to debubble, and I think in this case you want to, because I do see some bubbles right there. Okay. Because of the fact that you're putting these in whole. Now, normally with the pureed one, I don't bother because there's no need to. Okay. not least. And I think I'll give these one last quick wipe. Should have debubbled first. So quick wipe just in case. Okay, and my trusty magnet. I have quite a few lids being ready, being prepared here because I'm going to need them today. So these will be processed along with my pureed tomatoes. I'm just going to put those aside for the time being. All I wanted to do here was be able to demonstrate that you don't need a fancy machine to put up your tomatoes. And there we have it. These will be put in the canner along with my pureed ones, and I think I'll be able to tell the difference. Yes, I will. Okay, so I'm going to continue along with my other tomatoes. Okay, just so that you're aware, I did not throw away all the cuttings and the peelings from these. I'm going to process them along with my other tomatoes through the machine because that will take out any pulp. Very efficient in giving you as much tomato back for what you process. Okay, but these are lovely. Definitely, I'm going to use this method for my tomatoes that come out of my garden. Okay. Okay, so meanwhile, the last of the tomatoes are being blanched, and I'm going to allow them to drain. Gives me the opportunity here to start cleaning some of these beans up. It's quite the pile here. So, and once the tomatoes are done, I'll wash out one of the pots and use it to blanch the beans. And then, as usual, I'll just lay them out on a tray with some freezer paper and put them in the freezer so that they'll freeze solid before I vacuum seal them. Nothing quick about any of this. And this is what, well, I am not unhappy with this yield. The more beans we can get, the better. Certainly should have gone to pick them yesterday. I had to leave some on the vine because they're a little more mature than I'd prefer. Maybe some people don't care, but I like them young and tender. And when they start to go beyond that, I just leave them there for seed. And we will have plenty for seed as well. So, like this one is still good, but just barely. Sorry, good to eat, but just barely. They're all good. Okay, I think I have to do another tomato unload and load. Okay, 2 loads are out, one last one to go, and then all the tomatoes will have been blanched. I have washed out one pot and put it back on the stove for these beans. So, yeah, I guess it's going to be a productive day. Now I'll likely finish off the beans and allow the tomatoes to drain during that process. And then it'll be real quick work after that, putting it through the machine. Very quickly turn to puree, and then we'll jar them up. Now Tony isn't too pretty today, but it's a working day and my hair is a mess, but that's okay. I don't have to be pretty to do this job. And I'm really glad I picked these beans. I'd like at least another flush or 2 like this. I'm hoping even for more than that. I'm still very pleased at the quantity that I keep getting out of there. Okay, I'm going to continue along with this, and then we'll get back to you when we're a little further along. Okay, so now while my beans are draining, they have been blanched, put in cold water, and now they're straining to get as much water out of them before I put them on a cookie sheet and put them in the freezer. So while they're straining, I'm going to start pureeing my tomatoes. And this job should go fairly quick and easy. Once we start, it takes no time at all. Okay, batch number 1 in the hopper. And yes, I do strain a lot of liquid out of this. And what happens is if you strain a lot of liquid, you're going to get less jars. But I prefer to have a thick puree rather than a lot of jars. First hopper done. So I probably have 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 loads of this. Hardly worth taking the machine out, but it is actually. So yeah, that looks nice and thick. Load number 2. And that's a big one. Okay, as you can see, the pulp is pretty thick. There's just seed and skin there. And my tomato sauce is pretty thick. So I'm going to just clean up this mess, get some jars ready, put the machine, parts of it in the sink and parts of it away elsewhere. Okay, almost there. I'm just going to stir this to try and make it even. Yes, and it is extremely thick. Now, I do make it thick. I could make it thinner and have a higher yield, but I don't use tomato paste in my sauce, so that is one of the benefits of leaving it thick. Now, normally, I aim for, let's see, between 15 and 18, and I usually am closer to the 15 range. Quart jars, which would mean about 30 pint jars, but I have a sneaking hunch this lot's not going to get near there, but we'll see. Mind you, we've already got 5 over there, so if we get another 25, then I'm within range. And that is, once again, it depends on how much you strain the water out of it. And some people don't. I mean, someone I know, a family member, makes hers extremely watery, and I say, why do you do that? She says, well, you only have to add water. Well, actually, I don't add water, so, but I also don't add paste. So it just depends on your own thoughts and ideas on what the best scenario is here. Okay, I'm going to get back to you when these are full, and we'll see how many I actually managed to get. Okay, now I've got a large quantity of vinegar ready here, and starting my cleaning process. And I'll probably do 5 jars at a time. Clean the rims and put lids and rings on. That's 4 and 5 there. Okay, so these 5 are ready to go. And as you can see, I don't debubble, and that's something I usually have an issue with because I was raised making tomatoes and tomato puree. You don't need to debubble. So it was a bit of a learning curve for me to definitely take the time to take the air out of the jars when you're doing something else. And I think my yield has been pretty good there. Those were the original 5 at the back, and that's the first 5 that I've canned. Notice that I still have the odd one that's too full, so I'm going to transfer some of the pulp to others that are not. I think that looks good now. Maybe this one's a little too full. Okay. And when you're doing a quantity like this, it's probably better to have some sort of a system rather than trying to do them one at a time, because it's just too time consuming that way. So. And I believe I did get very good yield for me. Certainly over 30 jars. Now, somebody might think that that's not very good yield at all, but because of the fact that I strain it so much, it is very good yield for me. I'm happy to get 30 jars. But these tomatoes were fairly good, and it really does depend on the quality of the tomatoes that year, whether or not you're going to get a good yield or not. Some of them are more watery than others, and it also depends on the time of year that you purchase your tomatoes. If you wait till later, they are cheaper, but they're also more full of water because of the rains. So I've learned that the earlier, as soon as they're available to purchase, if you're going to buy them, that's the best time to do it. Wait a couple of weeks, they're still available for at least a month, but they, as I say, they become cheaper and they become more liquidy. So you're straining, you're paying for it, well, you're getting more water. I think I've got enough done that I could almost count what I got here. It's 5, so that's 20. With that, 20, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30, 33. Not bad for me. Not bad at all. Okay, so it's a matter of processing these. Okay, I'm pressure canning these jars of tomatoes. I was able to fit 20 pint jars in my pressure canner, which is awesome. 2 layers. And I'm going to pressure can them for 10 minutes at 10 pounds pressure. Back to my beans. They have been patiently draining away while I was doing all the tomatoes, and now is a good time to put them on some freezer paper and put them in the freezer. Now I do pile these high, I don't worry about it. As long as they're drained good, they do come apart. They don't stick together, and they're drained reasonably well enough. They don't have to be perfect, just not a lot of water left in them. So I tend to do 2 rows That way I can just pull them off and put them in a vacuum seal bag when I'm done. And getting a nice, healthy volume of tomatoes from the plants that I have in the garden, which is awesome. Didn't even take a lot of beans to grow this many. Okay, so when this is done and these are layered, I put them in the freezer. When they're frozen solid, I'll pull them out, put them in a vacuum seal bag, and they look like this when they're done. So definitely worth doing. Okay, there it is. All that's left now is to put this in the freezer and do a wash up. Quite a lot of wash up to do here today.